Well, hello everybody and welcome back to the channel. I'm Richard and this is Lap of the World. Do not worry, there is nothing wrong with the black NSX. It is simply up on the quick jack so we could swap out the exhaust. That's some work we've been doing over on Twitch, if you've been following us there. But we were also otherwise just giving it kind of a quick once over as NS Expo is coming up pretty quick and we want to make sure we are set to go for the car's sort of second maiden voyage, if you will, out on a track following its engine rebuild. But one thing we wanted to do in the meantime is I think cover a base that we are a little bit uniquely qualified to talk about, and that is how stuff has held up that we've done to the car. This could be aftermarket parts we put on, or just work that we did. You see a lot of the times on YouTube, I guess, you see people do stuff to a car and then you never hear about it again. But that doesn't give me much value, and I don't think it gives you much value either. The biggest question with a lot of these, like, aftermarket parts, or should I do this myself versus have a professional do it, is how has stuff held up? And we are going to answer that question today on several of the things that you've seen on our channel. I'll be linking the relevant videos in cards where I can, otherwise I'll leave all the links down in the description. And I've also chaptered the video here so you'll be able to kind of skip ahead to your section of interest if there was something in particular that you were curious about. But without any further ado, we're going to work from front to back and talk about some of the stuff we've done to the car on the channel. No further ado, let there be light. One of our 2020 COVID projects was swapping out the NSX's incandescent headlights for some LED units. These were retrofits by Bolster, and we did the bulbs along with some custom dust covers on the back. There have been great advancements in dust covers for LED bulbs for the NSX since then. I'll give a shout out to KUYA Automotive, who does sell some good ones. The biggest question that we got out of that video is how are the Bolster bulbs going to hold up in the long term? Well, here we are 3 years and about 30,000 miles later, which has included several cross-country trips, driving in all climates and conditions, numerous track days, and every bulb still works. We're going to drive it down to Expo in Atlanta. Again, not a very long run for us this time, but I have high confidence that these are going to continue to work. And even so, like 3+ years out of a set of bulbs for the price point they're at, I'm kind of good with that. I feel like I've gotten my money's worth. So thumbs up, let's move on. Another COVID project we tackled in 2020 were these very crusty at the time radiator support plates. They had developed a lot of surface rust and the fasteners were also pretty heavily corroded. We sandblasted it, painted it, and then put it back in place with the original bolts, just kind of with a coat of paint. That has all held up pretty well. The only thing I would probably do differently if I do it again, and which I may do differently when I do it again, is to use a little bit more waterproof grease on the bolts, or just replace the bolts with something like a titanium bolt that just won't rust again. While we're in the frunk, I figured I would spare a thought for our Koyo Radiator that we installed in December of 2020. So far that has been great. I don't know that it's done any better as far as cooling than the OEM unit. However, it has not had anything go wrong with it, and it was a very easy install. Again, that video is down in the description. As far as the screen, so this is looking at the radiator from the front with the Science of Speed sourced radiator screen. You can see that some small stuff has snuck through. However, for the probably, again, 20 to 30,000 miles we've put on the car since then, it is in relatively good shape. Most of the fins you can see there are still straight. The vast majority of the fins there you can see are still very straight. And you can definitely tell down here that the screen has caught some stuff that would have definitely done some damage otherwise during our road tripping and race tracking. I'll be getting that cleaned out before we take off for Expo, but I figured it was good for show and tell for now. Moving to the interior now, we'll start right up here with this matte carbon knee bolster that we got from EuroBoutique. That we kind of led the charge on getting this into production because I wanted something more robust than the stock knee bolster that kept breaking as I was taking it on and off to get to things under the dash. This guy has held up very well. The matte carbon is still matte. And then over on the other side, where most of the person contact and abuse would happen, you can see down here a few little surface marks where I've nicked it with my keychain. Otherwise, though, everything looks great. It is still, there's no yellowing to be found, and again, the matte carbon is still matte in spite of some lower leg contact down here. It hasn't polished out or anything like that. So I'm still pleased with that. It hasn't, I had some concerns when I installed it that the lack of felt on the upper tabs would lead to some squeaking, but that really has not been the case. So Rick, if you're watching this, you were totally right. It's fine. Sticking with our interior exploration for just a moment, we'll also talk about our seat covers that we did in 2019 from Ridies.com. These have held up pretty well. Let me get you some close-ups here of the usual wear locations, and you can see that they're holding up decently for 35,000 miles of use at this point. The lower side bolster here is showing next to no wear. I think we're starting to get a little bit of wearing in on this kind of flex joint area down here in the bottom of the side bolster. You can see right about right here, there's just a little bit of creasing starting to happen there, but certainly no hints of tears or damage, and the stitching is still good. Moving up the side bolster here, again, it's basically new looking. And then the, zoom out here for just a second. The actual seat insert portions, aside from probably me needing to vacuum them out after our last road trip, these have held up very well, and you can see no evidence of any real, wear there whatsoever. Maybe up here at the top with this little area, just from where we've, sitting in that. But the driver's side bolster definitely would have the bulk of the wear. The passenger side bolster is in better condition than this. Moving on to something we did actually before we even started making videos on stuff we were doing on the NSX, I will give a quick shout out to these engine hatch struts right here. These are from Science of Speed, and these went on the car at around 2012, I want to say. Actually, it's probably earlier than that. It was probably like 2009, because the ones that came with the car when I bought it in 2008 were shot, and I didn't want to break the glass hatch having it fall down. So these were a very early edition. They might have even happened, actually, they probably didn't happen in 2008. I probably got them in holiday season 2008, put them on in early 2009. So these have been there for, over a decade at this point, and probably 100,000 miles or better. And they are still holding the hatch up just fine. They do still sell these. I'll leave a link down in the description, but awesome product here. 10 out of 10 for longevity on those. Now, the other thing that we did do on the channel was we recovered our engine cover here. That is also holding up fairly well. The first thing to point out with this is, of course, that I can do this and my hand doesn't come up fuzzy. As we pan across, you can tell it looks pretty much like it did when we finished this project, recovering the engine cover with a cloth type material. We opted for that versus flocking, and so far I don't regret the decision. There are a couple of small wrinkles. I think the one that is right here, kind of center of frame right now, that one was there from the beginning. I think it was just a crease in the material as it came from the manufacturer that we weren't able to completely flatten out with the glue and pressure technique that we had at the time. I could probably do better than that if I did it again. However, it's only really noticeable if pointed out. But otherwise, it makes the engine cover very functional as a storage area. And again, you don't end up with black fuzz over everything. So no regrets on that project. Getting into the engine compartment, if we look not too far into the bowels of our newly rebuilt motor here, you'll see these anodized aluminum caps where the normal factory, I think, plastic cam plugs would normally be. These are from SOS, and these have been on the car since the first time I had the valve covers done in 2010 or 2011. We reused them, although we did change the double O-rings. But the double O-rings, very, very cheap. So they've, I think, versus the factory part, having replaced them with just the O-rings, they probably almost paid for themselves in that service cycle. They do still sell these, can recommend. Moving under the car for a second, we're going to talk about our Pride headers here. Those, other than some, just usual discoloration from the heat cycles we put them through, those have held up great. They've been, removed from the car and put back on and futzed around with a little bit. And they're currently not leaking with the factory donut gaskets that came with them. And they're still feeding the Science of Speed high flow cats that we have just fine. Those cats are about back to 2013 or so. They have also held up great. The only issue that I've noticed with the Pride headers since I put them on is with this area up in here. Due to the way that the the flange bolt pattern was drilled in them. If you don't get the installation quite right, you may need to clearance a couple of those holes to get the rear bank to not interfere with this frame rail, as it can make a kind of a scary sound. It's just a little bit fiddly, but once you solve that, you should be good to go. Now, in full disclosure, I did make Pride aware of the issue at the time, so they may have done things to correct it if you get a new set now. But if you're buying one used, definitely something to check on, or something to potentially ask them if you are planning on ordering. They seem very responsive, so the hope is that they would have addressed the issue by this point. The last thing that I would have loved to have given you a long-term update on was our major service series, in which we spent most of the first part of 2021 doing our own timing belt, water pump, and valve adjustment job on the car. We at least, though, that was on the old motor, so it's not going to continue to be a thing, and the new motor came with all that stuff. Like, it's had a fresh set all put on anyway. But we at least got a report card from that, from some people at Science of Speed that I would consider experts on that kind of service. And so the good news is they did not uncover any sins. The car was incorrect timing. There was no, they did not admonish me for any valves being way out of adjustment. And there were no leaks in the water pump or around that area. The only sin that I was guilty of was having one of the timing cover gasket sections was dangling out of place from where I'd had to reposition that after I had everything kind of back together. I'd noticed I don't know what you would call that, the front upper cover and the lower cover were a little bit misaligned after I got everything resituated. And in the course of like realigning those, I guess I squirted out part of the, I think the lower covers, one of the gaskets on that. But other than that, I think hopefully there is some confidence there that the rest of that process, if you followed along and were using that as a template to do your own belt job on an NSX, that I have not steered you terribly wrong with any of the techniques that I demonstrated to do that. But that was kind of that's been our summary there. So we've kind of gone from nose to tail with some projects that we've done on the channel, giving you some updates. All of those we seem to have had good luck with. So fingers crossed that continues, but we will now continue on with our process of getting the car ready for Expo and ready for its first track outing on its new bottom end, and we will kind of just go from there. But we hope you found the video entertaining, if not informative. We appreciate you guys for the support. If you're not already subscribed, please click the button, because we are going to now resume normal service, and we appreciate you all bearing with us through our sort of tumultuous beginnings to a 2023. And we hope to take this as now our step towards getting back in the swing of things. So you can look forward to, after we're done prepping for Expo, we are planning to do our daily vlogs at the event, although it's going to be fewer days than it has been in the past, because Atlanta's only like 3 hours instead of 3 days from our house this time. But look forward to that. And yeah, otherwise, if I missed anything, or if you have any questions, leave them in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, give it a like. Otherwise, until next time, I'm Richard. This is Lap of the World. We'll see you all in the next video, if not at the track.